Hey, so great job working on your penny drop lab. Now it's time to successfully analyze your experiment through something we call a power conclusion. This is a written piece of work. Usually it's about a paragraph, 6 sentences or so, and I'm going to take you through step by step, sentence by sentence, and show you exactly what you need to have in the conclusion to your experiment. So as an example, we're going to pretend that we did an experiment with adding fertilizer to plants to see how tall they would grow. In all of the example sentences, I'm going to pretend that that was the experiment that I did. But as you write your own power conclusion, make sure that you use the information that you gathered in the penny drop experiment from your last couple assignments. Okay, to start off the power conclusion, your first sentence refers back to your hypothesis. You want to start this sentence with "I thought that," and where you see the blank line, you fill in word for word your hypothesis. So your example sentence would sound like this. I thought that if the amount of fertilizer increased, then the height of the plant would also increase because the fertilizer would add things the plant needs to be healthy. This matches the hypothesis that I wrote originally. And that's all you need for your first sentence. Moving on to your second sentence, here's where you describe your results in words. Start your sentence with, I found out that. For example, I found out that the plants with more fertilizer grew taller than the plants without added fertilizer. So I'm telling the reader, okay, I've done my experiment. I added more fertilizer to some plants, less fertilizer to others, and I found out that the ones with more fertilizer grew taller. Next is our third sentence. Here, you back up that statement that you just made in sentence 2 with your results in numbers. So you actually tell your reader, here is the data that I gathered. Your sentence starter sounds like this. The average for blank was blank, while the average for blank was blank. If we're using the fertilizer experiment, it might sound like this. The average for plants with fertilizer was 21 centimeters, while the average for plants without fertilizer was 18 centimeters. When you write the sentence, make sure you give me averages, don't give me any data from individual trials, and secondly, make sure that whatever average you give me, include the units with that. And get this information directly from your data table. Make sure you look at the average row or column. Your fourth sentence is probably the most difficult one to write. In this sentence, I'm expecting you to use scientific words or principles to explain why your results occurred. In this sentence, you explain how the experiment relates to what you're learning. So you start the sentence with, this relates to what we learned because, and you fill in the blank. So in the fertilizer experiment, I might say, this relates to what we learned because plants need certain nutrients that are not always found in the soil in large amounts. And our fifth sentence is where we explain any errors or mistakes or uncontrolled variables that may have changed the results in your experiment. Start this sentence with, I think blank could have affected my results because blank. So in the fertilizer experiment, I might have said this. I think placing the plants in group B too far from the window could have affected my results because they may not have gotten as much light as the plants in group A. So I'm comparing, okay, I've recognized that I did not control how far all of the plants were from the window, or I didn't control how much light they got, which may or may not have affected my results, but I'm recognizing that possible mistake here. And the sixth and final sentence, I know it was a long one, is where you talk about how would you change the experiment if you could do it again, if you could do it over. You could talk about a change to an experimental error, or you could talk about changing one of the variables that you tested. Start with, in the future, I would like to blank. So my example sentence says, in the future, I would like to measure how quickly the plants grow instead of how tall they get. So here's the final format for this paragraph. Notice it's in paragraph form. I indent the first line. When you type yours out, please make sure it is double spaced, 12-point font, 1-inch margins. And these are all of the example sentences that I read to you throughout the presentation. Just put one right after another. Okay, that's your power conclusion. Not as hard as you thought, I hoped. And if you have any questions, as always, make sure you give me a call or send me an email. Thanks.